and it's time to spin. So this is our last thing on the agenda for tonight. What Bond film are we watching? And it looks like it's going to be Octopussy.
Okay, there we go.
Interesting pick there.
I was not expecting that one.
No. Octopussy.
Hey, we'll go with it. And welcome back to the SuperCaZt, everybody. I'm your host, the Superfosh, the man who put the super in SuperCaZt. And as always, I could not do this show without my good buddy and co-host,
Steve Z, the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt.
And we want to welcome you guys to our latest episode as we talk about the Roger Moore Bond film, Octopussy. This is an interesting film, and we'll get into that, obviously. But I want to kind of start by getting your initial thoughts and what you thought of this movie before viewing it for the show, and has it changed since then?
Well, to be honest, if you couldn't tell my reaction on the live stream, I was not totally excited when this film came up. This is one, I got it. It was actually probably one of the last ones I saw. And it's kind of crazy because I'm a big Roger Moore fan, but this was just one that I never got around to seeing. I guess it just the box didn't appeal to me or something, and it was also one of the last ones I owned. So this one's never been a special place for me. I've tried to like it more. It's one that I feel like I should like more because it has Roger Moore for one thing. So I've given it a lot of shots, and even on this viewing, I was hoping it'd be the time. Unfortunately not. It's still probably toward the bottom for me, but I definitely have some things I want to share that I can say as positives from it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like you, I'm definitely a Roger Moore fan when it comes to the Bond films, especially growing up. I just thought, Live and Let Die and Man with a Golden Gun, just to name a couple, were awesome. But this one, you know what? I don't even remember the first time ever seeing this film. I know I did, because we had the collection on VHS like you did. But honestly, I think I maybe watched this movie once, one other time. Just because it's just not as memorable. Roger Moore's still great, he's still awesome, and we'll get into his performance and everything. But yeah, this is one that, like you, I was not exactly excited about to watch. I was hoping that perhaps me being a little older, I might get a little bit more enjoyment out of it. We'll see if I did or not. I'm going to leave a teaser there.
Yeah, good teaser, and I know that some people do love this one, and that's why we are covering it, because that's the thing about the Bond series. Everybody has their favorite Bond movie. I mean, there are some people out there that are like, oh yeah, Diamonds Are Forever, that's my jam.
Oh yeah.
So we know how it is. So we're excited about covering this when we're going to get into it. But before we do, if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And we also like it when you share it with other people.
And let other people know. We love to have new fans. So welcome if you're new here, and let's get into it.
I thought we should start off just talking about the series at the time, because this one's got an interesting story behind it. It was not supposed to be Roger Moore in this one, because after doing For Your Eyes Only, he was like, you know what? I'm getting kind of old. I'm just, I'm not feeling it as much, and it seems kind of silly for me being this super spy at my age and trying to hit on these girls and all that stuff. So he was feeling his age, and he didn't want to do it. But here's the deal. There was another Bond movie coming out that year, 1983. Because I'm not going to get the whole Kevin McClory, how he had rights to Thunderball and all that. But basically, they were doing a remake of Thunderball, starring none other than the original Bond himself, Sean Connery.
Who was also up there in age at the time.
Yeah. So if you're Eon, you're like, okay, I guess we have to at least beat that one at the box office. So they scrapped the plans for a new Bond and said, let's roll out Roger one more time. And once Roger saw the paycheck, he was like, okay, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the series was. And they bring back the same director from the previous one, John Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
And he totally does it differently than For Your Eyes Only. So I don't know if somebody was saying you got to do a course correction. That one was too serious, a little too violent at times. Yeah. But this one definitely went back into the Roger camp. As in campy, not his camp or something.
Yeah, it was definitely lighter in tone. I mean, the title says it all right there, you know. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's the first thing that kind of struck to me is Roger Moore is old in this. Like, he's just, I don't know, it's kind of creepy at that point where he's hitting on girls probably a third of his age, and you're just like, dude, you know. But he's still got the charm. He's still Roger Moore. As we said before we started, I think Roger Moore is probably the best part of this film. It's my favorite part of the film because I just love Roger Moore, and I know, yeah, he's probably too old to be playing Bond at this point in his career, but he gives it all he's got, and you know.
Oh yeah.
I think he saves this movie from being just absolutely atrocious, pretty much.
Yeah, he brings it. He's not phoning it in. And like you said, the man just oozes charm and charisma. He could probably get out the phone book and just read it, and you're like, oh, sounds pretty interesting. And he's definitely got the comedy down, which his films always, when they're at their best, they lean into that a little bit more.
Yep.
And before we move on from him, I just got to do some confessing here. This is...
Go for it.
About 2 years ago, I went through some soul searching, and I realized that Roger Moore and his films are probably my favorite run of Bond. I was just, I guess me changes as a person, but yeah, he surpassed Connery for me, Craig, all those guys. He just became my Bond that I'm just like gravitate toward the most too. So definitely have that bias going into this one. So when I slammed this film later on, you know, it still has a sweet spot for me.
Right.
And Roger, he definitely pulls off the sillier moments in this one. You can tell he's winking at the camera a little bit. And the only part that really hurts him in it, the action sequences. You can tell he's definitely using that body double a bunch. But even when he's just like shooting a gun or something, I don't buy it at all. It just looks like kind of silly. Like, yeah, he shoots it and I remember there's one scene in particular, he runs out of bullet and he looks at his gun and he's like, what the heck? I mean, like, that's doesn't seem like a trained killer to me there.
Right.
So I don't know. That's probably the worst part about the film and his performance is just him doing the action, as in him not doing the action. Obviously, he can look like he's driving a car really fast or an airplane at the beginning, but when it comes to fighting somebody or shooting at somebody, running, anything like that, he's just not good at it.
So, just to kind of go back on what you were saying about changing to kind of Roger Moore being your favorite, I grew up with Roger Moore as my favorite. I think the first movie I remember seeing was Live and Let Die, so that hooked me. It took me growing up a few years to really appreciate what everybody else was saying about Sean Connery's version. And what I will say now as an adult is Roger Moore's the more likable, funny, charismatic Bond, but Sean Connery's a better fighter Bond, if that makes sense. Like, his fighting is a little bit more
believable.
I don't know what believable. Yeah, that's a good word. I don't know what the word is, but he's a better fighter on screen, in my opinion, than Roger Moore. I'll give him that for sure. But I do get the whole. He does have a little bit of charm, but I still think Roger Moore has all of the rest of that over Sean Connery.
And I think they lean into that a little bit.
They do.
They make this version of Bond have to think a little bit more. He's more clever, pulls out some weird tricks or something. That's kind of what it is. He definitely relies on his charm, but he also has some tricks up his sleeve, thinks on his feet. So I like that he's a thinking man's Bond.
Right, exactly. And again, I mean, he leans into the comedy real well. He owns it. He's got really good timing. The girls, he's still got the charm. I mean, he is my favorite Bond. So I think, like you said, I think he really elevates this film a lot with his presence. I think a lesser Bond would have probably made this film unwatchable, really. But let's kind of get into it and talk about it.
Definitely. So the pre-title sequence and the title sequence are the part of the Bond universe you always had to talk about. And this one, I'm going to chalk it up to kind of mid. I think it's pretty long, but I do like parts of it. I like the one scene in particular where the airplane has to go through a hangar.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that part. And you could tell that it's definitely a technical feat. It's hard to be using this little model plane that they have at times, and sometimes it's a real plane. It's definitely good filmmaking, pulling off the illusion of this. So I do respect that. I like the comedy yet again. We're saying that over and over. We see right off the bat Roger Moore putting on the guise, pretending to be somebody else. And I'm going to say, I think this is the most costume changes of any Bond there is. That's just from the get-go. It's like, this Bond, he's changing costumes. He's going to pretend to be a different person. And he does a pretty good job. And I do like that aspect, the little spy work. And I don't know, as far as the title sequence, we'll save that for a sec. I want to hear your thoughts about the opening.
No, the opening was really strong. I think the opening, to be honest with you, and I don't mean to ruin the rest of the show, but I think the opening was probably my favorite part of this entire film. In fact, I didn't even remember the opener before the title credits. Like, if you would ask me, how does this movie start? I don't know. Can't remember. So I was really surprised how good this part of the film was. And I was like, okay, maybe this movie's not so bad. And then the movie gets started. I couldn't have told you the title sequence. And I thought the title was okay. So I had high hopes from the jump, man. I'm telling you, I was locked in from the start. It was just kind of everything afterwards kind of fell apart for me. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, and it comes in pretty quickly with the theme song. So this is probably one of the worst theme songs of the whole series, in my opinion.
Yes.
I think they just had done too many slow ballads back to back to back. Because, let's say, Nobody Does It Better, but Carly Simon. That's just perfect. It's awesome. Moonraker definitely is a dip. And then we have For Your Eyes Only, which is yet another slower song. And then here comes this one. We're in all-time high. I don't know. It's
not my favorite Bond thing.
I don't like it. I don't like the animation that comes with it. It's just a yawn for me, and I don't want to be this critical of the whole film the whole time through.
Hey,
but
we're gonna have to give our honest opinion.
Yeah, when you see a good pre-title sequence and you see a bad one, you know when it's bad.
Right. I totally agree with you. My parents used to have the CD with all the theme songs on there, and I would always skip this one because I just when it started, I was just like, I hate this song. So I'd skip it, and I kind of fast forward through the title sequence, to be honest with you. Like, I was just like, alright, yeah, okay, whatever. Just because I didn't like the song.
So then we get into the plot, and this is one of the parts of Octopussy that people either love or they hate. Because this one is probably one of the most convoluted and hard to follow plots, I think.
And that's why I'm going to let you explain it, or at least attempt to.
I will attempt. I'm not going to say the whole thing beat per beat. But basically, it starts off with a 00 agent being pursued by two guys dressed like they're circus performers. And this part is actually pretty effective. It's pretty frightening.
Yeah?
Does not match with the rest of the film, really.
No, it doesn't.
These two guys are chasing down this 00 agent who happens to be dressed as a clown. And he gets killed right at an ambassador's place or something, and he's got this Fabergé egg in his hand, so a mystery has started. What does this egg have to do with anything? We'll find out. So basically, Bond gets put on the case, and he ends up somehow getting the real one Meanwhile, he had a fake in his pocket, gives it to the bad guys, and from there, he's trying to track who the person that originally owned the egg was. Turns out that it's this mysterious woman named Octopussy. And Bond goes and meets up with her eventually, but before he does, he makes this other guy really mad at him. This guy named Kamal Khan, played by Louis Jourdan. And he's turned out to be the big bad of the film, who's also working with this Soviet general named General Orlov, played by Steven Berkoff. And that's where it gets kind of crazy, because Berkoff's trying to start a war, Jourdan's just trying to get rich, and Bond's trying to stop them all. So it's very much a plot that's all over the place, as in
it is.
It visits a lot of continents, but it definitely has its strong points. And to me, the strongest point of all is Maud Adams as Octopussy.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I thought Louis Jourdan did well as Kamal Khan. I mean, not my favorite bad guy in the series, but he wasn't absolutely terrible. Kind of forgetful though, like not somebody I would be like top 10 baddies or anything like that. But he was okay. Steven Berkoff, I didn't even remember his character the last time I'd seen this movie, so that was kind of a surprise. I was like, I don't remember this guy the last time, so that was kind of interesting. But you're right, man. The plot was almost too convoluted. Like, I know Bond sometimes does that. You know, you have these stories where things get overlapped, and you know, you have your double agents and stuff like that. I don't think that worked for this film. I think there was not enough explanation. I don't really know why it didn't work, but it just didn't for me.
Yeah. Well, they have conflicting things. They're trying to create a lighthearted romp adventure, at the same time trying to create like a Cold War espionage thriller. And that's really hard to do. And yeah, it kind of devolves into like, what's the point of the eggs? What was the point of the eggs in the first place?
Yeah.
I don't know. The plot's not the strongest point.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Maud a little bit, just because she's the titular character, and to me, if you're going to hook Bond up with anybody, this is probably the best bet they could have done. Because like we said, Roger's a little bit older.
Yeah.
He needs a more mature woman.
Yep.
And Octopussy, or Maud Adams as Octopussy, she's not taking any crap from anyone. And she's mature.
No.
She's sophisticated. She's in style. She's got power. She's definitely the perfect match for Bond. So I put her really probably in one of the top 5 Bond love interests, in my opinion, because I think it just makes a lot of sense for the character to like a woman like this. And I really buy their chemistry together. I think their scenes, I mean, yes, she had played a previous Bond girl in The Man with the Golden Gun, but she was just kind of a side girl in this one. This time she's the main girl. And I think she and Roger do a great job together, and I think she's definitely a bright spot in this film.
I do agree with that a lot. I think she was a good compliment to Roger's Bond. I don't think she would have worked well with Sean Connery's Bond. That's one thing that I always find myself is like, if it's
no, he would have slapped her.
Do what now?
He probably would have slapped her at some
Right, exactly. But I do feel like that Roger Moore and her had good chemistry, like you said. I don't know that I would put her as high on the list of love interest for Bond as you, but she definitely impressed me. I think she did a good job for what she was given, and she did give a good performance. And it was interesting to see an older person be the love interest, because like you said, Roger Moore was getting old, so it would be kind of creepy for him to fall in love with a 20-year-old or whatever. Yeah. So I think she did really well.
And she's just like effortlessly beautiful, which and I love her voice. I think she's really good in the part. And you mentioned Louis Jourdan. I think he's a great actor.
He is.
And I like a lot of his scenes, but to me, why he doesn't work as a villain is he's never menacing.
Right.
And I think that has to do with the sort of the writing a little bit, because if you think about early in the film, Bond is just pulling it over on him every turn. It's like, they sit down, they're playing backgammon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Bond takes him to school, makes him look like an idiot. Next time we see him, swapping eggs.
Yeah.
Bond makes him look like an idiot. That's pretty much the whole film. So the guy never has that menace to him that I think a Bond villain needs. He needs to either be ultra over the top, you just love the scenes they're in, or very menacing. And this guy, he's really neither.
Right, I agree with that. I thought the writing was really weak for this character. His performance was not the best, but I think a lot of it has to do with the way the character was written. Obviously, you're going to compare him to Blofeld or, Goldfinger or something like that. And when you look at those guys, like you said, there's just no fear in that character. Like, you're just like, okay, yeah, he's a bad guy, but Bond can take him. I didn't feel like there was any danger for Bond as much as there is in some of the others, and I don't know if that was intentional to make it lighter, because we said there was jokes and stuff, or just bad writing. I wasn't sure. I was going to leave that up to you and ask you what you thought. That was one thing that really disappointed me and dropped the movie a lot down. It was the disappointment of the villain, because I think you have to have that strong villain to make the story compelling, and if you don't, you're just like, who cares?
Mm-hmm. And there is actually another major villain, General Orlov, Steven Berkoff. I like this actor.
Yeah.
He's always, I don't know, he's got the weirdest cadence of any person actor. Like, he will just randomly yell certain words in a sentence. He'll just get very calm. It's just a very weird performance. His character, I definitely think there were probably journals like this if people were pushing for a more peaceful way. There was probably people in the Soviet Union like, no, bomb them all to heck. We could take it all. And that's who this guy is. And I do like that element. That's why it's a Cold War piece. Appreciates what it's like being in the Cold War in the 80s. But I don't have anything else to say about him other than that.
Yeah, I mean, you compare him to, or at least I did, you compare him to like the general from GoldenEye, and I'm like, that guy was way better than this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he was a kind of a pushover himself a little bit in GoldenEye, but I really felt like he was a better written character and a better acted character as far as a Russian general goes, so,
The West is decadent and divided. It has no stomach to risk our atomic reprisals. General Gogol, let me remind
Comrades,
you...
sit down.
I wish to tell
Both of
you...
you. World socialism will be achieved peaceably.
Now I finally get to some positives.
Okay, here we go.
The henchmen in this one are great.
They are.
Everybody from the assassin that comes after Bond at Octopussy's, the guy with like the blade for a weapon, the saw blade, that guy was awesome. And then later on you get the two knife throwing guys, and of course our big tall guy with the turban. Just the great henchmen across the board. They all have unique factors and they all are very formidable. It's like, man, Bond, how's he going to beat this guy? That's probably the best part. We have a very non-intimidating arch villain, but all his henchmen, they're pretty cool.
Right.
I like them all. They're all very memorable.
Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, nothing to write home about from my money, but I do agree with you. I think the action, from their standpoint anyway, was really good. So
yeah, to me, they create fear and definitely poses a problem. That's what you want in a good henchman. So that brings us to the action. Like I said, it's kind of a mixed bag in this one. There's some action in it, and some of the sequences are pretty cool. Some of them are pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think there's a couple of scenes where you're like, okay, yeah, the action's pretty good here, but then you would get a scene or two later on, and it would just be like children playing or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
It was just kind of weak in some areas, and I don't know if that's mishap. I don't know, but it was kind of weird to see that.
And I've got specific examples of both. So
please do.
To me, an action sequence that worked is sort of like that Most Dangerous Game scene where basically all those guys are hunting Bond out in the jungle.
Yeah.
And that always was an effective scene to me because it's like, oh man, what's he going to do? He has no weapons, no way to get out. All these guys are chasing him. All the odds are in their favor. I mean, they got elephants, they got guns, they got it all.
Right.
Meanwhile, Bond is like, has to deal with the jungle. He's getting leeches on him. He runs into snakes, into tigers, everything. But then it gets silly. Bond decides to swing from a vine and have a Tarzan yell when he does it. Kind of breaks the tension there, doesn't it?
I'm glad you brought that up. I was like, I wonder if Steve's going to talk about this, because that was just goofy.
Pretty cringe.
Yeah, good word there. Cringe is a good word for that, because I was just like, all right, I guess we're gonna, go that route now.
Full on Looney Tunes now.
Exactly.
But
wow.
Another good scene is the train scene where Bond's like fighting those guys on the train. Yeah, it's not Roger Moore, but still looks pretty cool. And definitely that whole part where the knife guy's chasing him, feel the danger. I think it's a good scene. Then we get to a scene that should be one of the best scenes, but it's kind of to me. And like you were saying, it's kind of silly.
Yeah.
And that's the big invasion at the end. When Octopussy and her girls and Bond are taking on Kamal Khan's group, and they're just like using silly stuff like circus moves and using ladders and all sorts of silly stuff. It becomes a comedy, and almost like this is like Saturday morning cartoon type stuff that I'm watching. And I know that's part of the charm for some people, and I generally love that in the Roger Moore films, especially like Moonraker or something like that. To me, it kind of leaned to just almost a little too far in that direction at that scene.
Some scenes in this film, and this one in particular, made me think of the Pink Panther films a little bit. It wasn't taking itself seriously, so it was just kind of just being comedic. And while that's okay for a Pink Panther film, I'm okay with a little bit of humor and silliness in a Bond film, especially in the older films. I felt like that scene in particular was where I was just like, yeah, no, this doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. I'm just, if you're Inspector Clouseau, whatever, that's fine. But this is James Bond. He's got to be a little bit cooler than this. And I felt like that scene in particular kind of killed the movie completely for me right there.
And that's bad. I mean, it has its moments. Like, I like the part where he slides down the rail with a machine gun, but then it cuts to these random circus girls fighting all these henchmen in silly ways.
I mean, you think about, and I thought about this scene in, Goldfinger, when all those girls are flying in the plane. And I was like, that's cool. That's a cool scene and everything. And then you get to this movie years and years later, and I don't know, it just way sillier. Yeah.
All right, so other elements, other things we can talk about. For me, the music, as I said, it's not the best. Positive, though, as we're keeping score here, I think the Q stuff's good. I really like Q in this film.
Q's always going to be a win. I think Q can elevate a lot of these Bond films, and he definitely does for this one. I mean, that's something that I don't think younger generations will really appreciate, is what his role was. Because, he could definitely be silly, but that's what you expected out of him. I watched, I guess it's either Dr. No or Rush with Love, one of the first couple, and he's not silly at all, and you're like, oh man, that's disappointing, because when you see him on screen, you just expect him to be funny, and good thing he was here. And him and Roger Moore, I think, play off each other probably the best Bond and Q scenes, I think.
I think so too. I think they both have their role.
Yep.
Roger Moore's the snarky, petulant guy that's gonna do silly stuff that just irks Q so bad. He's just so mad. 007, really good.
Yep.
He's great, and I love that he ends the film falling into a balloon with a bunch of girls, and it's just perfect for him.
Yep.
I like that, and I like the locales. I like how everywhere you go, you feel like this is an adventurous place. It feels different than the last place we were in the film, and I like that aspect of it. And that's a cool thing when a Bond film can kind of take you out of your life and your living room and put you in a place. So even though we've been crapping on it and pointing out all this other stuff, I still think the film has its positives.
Yeah, I mean, like we said at the top, there's some things to like. Obviously, Roger Moore carries this film on his back and makes it watchable. And I think every scene that he does, whether he's being funny, whether he's doing action, like I said before, his action scenes are not the best. His fighting, to me, is not the best. But his charm, his humor, his line deliveries, I think he really elevates this film a lot just by doing what Roger Moore does best as James Bond. And that's why he is my favorite, because he has all those talents and stuff. So while it does sound like we're just giving this movie to the toilet, there's some good things about it. There's some things to say nice things about, but overall, I probably would never put it in my top 20 Bond films or anything like that.
Yeah. Here's one last little thing I gotta talk about.
Okay.
It's sort of a lingering critique, but also I can kind of spin it in my mind to being a positive.
All right.
And it's really that final scene of the whole Berlin thing, where basically 007 has to disarm a bomb, and he's got to go into this circus unseen. Because he can't just go in as Bond. Everybody's looking for Bond. So he has to disguise himself. He disguises himself as a clown. And here we are seeing 007 dressed as a clown in one of the most tense scenes of the whole film. He has to get these people convinced that there is a bomb and that they need to disarm it very soon. So it's very tense. It's been building up to this. I'm glad he's doing some spy work actually disguising himself.
Right.
But what doesn't work for me, it's just so off-putting, seeing James Bond dressed as a clown. So I don't know. It's a positive scene, but at the same time, I'm like, can it really be?
Any other actor, and I'm talking Sean Connery, even Pierce, even Daniel Craig, did that scene that exact way, I don't think this worked. I don't think it worked. I think Roger Moore, by whatever, he made it work. For me, I thought that was pretty clever. I mean, is it my favorite Bond scene? No, but I think he made it work, honestly. I'm going to defend him on that one.
Okay. And the bad thong, once again, that's kind of like the big climax. And then it still has 30 minutes nearly left in the film. So
exactly.
It definitely is a film that's worth watching, especially on like a Saturday afternoon where you really don't want to think too much. You just kind of want to chill and enjoy yourself. But beyond that, it's definitely not one I'm going to revisit for a while. I'm hoping one day it does click for me. I really like the adventure aspect of it. You can definitely tell it was influenced by Raiders of the Lost Ark. It came out a few years before. But other than that, I'm just like, Roger Moore, you're great. I love your filmography, especially you as Bond. But Octopussy, I really wish they wouldn't have made this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like we said, there's some things to like about this film, and there's some things to compliment. Obviously, Roger Moore being probably the best thing that we could talk about, but it's definitely not going to be one that I will be rushing to watch again soon. But what do you guys think? Do you guys like this film? Is this a film that you kind of hold in high regard? And if so, why? Well, let us know, because, you know, like Steve, I do want to appreciate this film more, and I wanted to like this film more just so I could have more things to say, nice things to say during our show. But I think we've done the movie as best we could, giving it as many compliments as we could. I think that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's a matter of taste.
It is.
And trying to come up with a good segue to our next thing.
Okay.
To me, my personal taste align with the spaghetti western. And if you don't know what a spaghetti western is, tune in the next episode. You're going to find out, because we're going to talk about the beginning of what they refer to as the Dollars Trilogy, starring none other than Clint Eastwood, A Fistful of Dollars.
Indeed. I'm really excited about talking about that film. Like Steve said, if you don't know what a spaghetti western is, find out, because you need to. Because if you've been living on a rock, haven't seen these films that we're about to lay upon you, you are in for a big surprise, pal.
Yeah, so if you want to check it out before we talk about it,
please do.
Fistful of Dollars, look for it. It's a great film, very stylized, great direction by Sergio Leone, plus a great performance by Clint Eastwood. We'll talk about it next time on the SuperCaZt.
And so thank you again, everybody, for joining us and hanging out with us as we talk about this film. Had a great time getting back to it. Please like and subscribe our YouTube channel and share this video with your friends and family and whoever. And make sure you're following us on Twitter at SuperCaZt with the Z. And for my buddy Steve, I am the SuperFoch. And we'll see you guys all next time on the SuperCaZt.